Welcome into the Morning Glory Show. I hope you're shit showered and shaved. I hope you got your mayo in your cup because it's time to tighten up. And we got a great show for you today, boys. But I am joined by my co-host, as always, Jonathan Miller at Esports Valen and B-Will at B-Will TFTV. How you doing today, B-Will?
I'm good, man. How about y'all?
Doing good. What about you, Jonathan?
Excited, man. Excited to get the legend in here, bro. Talk some draft and finally have someone to help defend me with this Devondre Sweat, because I was this whole like triangle we got here. I was fighting a losing battle, so excited to get some intellectual thought.
Zach, I want to tell you, you and Stoney did an excellent job covering this draft from the Senior Bowl, even before the Senior Bowl. I mean, y'all did an exceptional job, man.
Fucking 7 hours of nonstop content on day 3. We're talking lunatics out there. Them, Easton, man. JT, just putting it in. But as you guys can see, we are joined by the man, the myth, the legend. You can find all of his writings on this Titans ether from Broadway Sports Media, paulkarski.com, stackingtheinbox.com, or you can catch him hosting the Football and Other F-Word show or the Football Show. Zach Lyons, welcome to the show. How you doing today, brother?
I'm excited to be here. I feel like this is almost the earliest I've ever talked about the Tennessee Titans in the mornings, but I'm sure there's some like Senior Bowl stuff that we did last year that was maybe just right on par. But appreciate all the kind words and everything. And the Senior Bowl coverage. I was telling my wife yesterday, is like I've gotten a couple of good night's sleep now, and I'm kind of like feeling more energized talking about the Tennessee Titans than I have felt like in about the last month. Like I've been dragging ass, drained. Like I don't really want to talk the draft anymore, but now I'm ready. I'm like full steam ahead.
No, I think everybody that's covered the draft gets to that point where in that last month you just got to fucking push through it, and that's what it is. But obviously the Titans had their draft, had a good showing. We'll hop into all of that. We got some late breaking news last night where Tyler Boyd is actually in Nashville already. Assume he's probably meeting with the team today. So, Zach, I want to start off the show. How many receivers do you think is going to make this 53-man roster, and which ones are pirated by Nick Westbrook-Ikine?
They're all on NWI watch. You're constantly looking over your shoulder with Nick Westbrook-Ikine in this locker room because he'll drain the life force out of you. He will find a way on the field if he's on the team. But the Tyler Boyd thing is pretty interesting. My instant I think a lot of people's instant reaction was relating it to Treylon Burks, which is not the way to look at it. We're talking about a guy that plays 88% of his snaps in the slot, and that's no exaggeration. That is where his bread and butter is made, and that's over his whole career, and he averages like 80 or more every year in the slot. So this is more about my baby boy Kyle Phillips. They're coming after my baby boy. They're trying to put the squeeze on him, get him out of there. Jaquan Jackson, of course, is drafted, and then now they're showing interest in Tyler Boyd. I still think you're looking at 6 wide receivers kept, and if Tyler Boyd were signed, my guess would be that it would be obviously be DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, Jaquan Jackson, NWI, and Treylon Burks. I don't think the Tyler Boyd situation really says anything about Treylon Burks. I mean, it maybe gives them more flexibility to trade him, but who's going to really want him? I saw Dallas Cowboys fans interested. You guys can have him. I mean, Give us a third-round pick. I'll be all over it. I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? It's just I think that this Tennessee Titans staff has faith in Treylon Burks, or at least are willing to give Treylon Burks a chance, because if they can get the pedigree that he was drafted with out of him, then that solves a lot of future issues with this team going beyond DeAndre Hopkins in 2025 and stuff. We'll see. I don't have faith, but hey, that's what they were hired to do, right?
I made an entire video about this, and I seem to be one of very few people defending Treylon Burks, and I said in the video, he doesn't necessarily deserve our defense, right? Like I totally understand the frustration from the production standpoint, from the health standpoint. It all makes sense. But what I talked about was, like, context matters, right? Like, if you look at the way how he came into the league, the situation that he came into, obviously the A.J. Brown expectations loomed over him. He came onto a roster that was much worse than previous years. and he was set up to fail. Now, obviously, you have to stay on the field to have production, but going into this year 3 for him makes a ton of sense, right? Like a lot of things the rock has turned, right? We have what seems to be and what appears to be an elite quarterback with elite arm talent, a much improved offensive line, and talent in front of Treylon Burks, not behind him, in front of him. So a lot of signs to me point to better production. Obviously, he has to stay on the field, but it makes sense for them to say, okay, we have to see what we have in this guy. And the pressure for Kyle Phillips is kind of the same. Like they're almost the same guy in terms of like what their situation is. But the Tyler Boyd stuff is funny. It's ironic. I literally made that video, and less than 24 hours later, Tyler Boyd's posting on Instagram that he's in downtown Nashville. So we'll see. And I agree with you. I don't think you're not upset if you add good football players to your team. So Tyler Boyd, I don't know what he's visiting about. I think it's very clear. Like he knows what he's getting into with Brian Callahan. Maybe it's just visiting with the front office and with the other coaches and stuff. But I would love the signing. I don't think it pushes Treylon Burks out necessarily. I think it gives you great depth and a bona fide starter at the slot, which is something that this team needs. We need better pass catchers, like period. So I'm fine with that. But I am intrigued by how many receivers you keep. Do you consider keeping 7? Is there another position that maybe you keep one less of? Because the Mike Vrabel team was like, okay, you're keeping 3 to 4 tight ends for sure. How many corners do you take? Like there's a lot of other factors that I'm interested. But yeah, I think you can get Tyler Boyd, you sign him. It's good football.
I think with the roster composition, I think we could look to Cincinnati and see how they did it with how many tight ends they kept, and that'd be a really good sign for us. On Treylon Burks, man, I mean, I feel for him a little bit because he didn't deserve the expectations. He shouldn't have been picked there in the first place. He didn't deserve the natural expectations that came with that, the natural comparisons that came with A.J. Brown. But in saying that, he didn't necessarily – I can't say wholeheartedly, and I don't know for sure, but from what I see on the outside looking, I can't say that he tried 100% in this situation. From things that I've heard that's not in the news, and then just what I see as well, I don't think that he's really put his all into being a Tennessee Titan, and the coaches say as much in the press conference. I mean, they don't question anybody else's off-season programs or talk about even off-season programs of any other player except for Treylon Burks. I mean, we've heard of 2, T.R. Tart and Treylon Burks in the same type of conversations in the last couple of years, so that's telling. On to the Tyler Boyd thing, I'm excited because it's an upgrade at wide receiver 3 that we have, but I'm also worried in the same sense of all this versatility talk that we've heard from Callahan and Holtz across the receivers. Where is that going to go when we get a guy like Tyler Boyd? Are we going to move these guys around as much as we said we are, or is it we're just sort of admitting defeat with Tyler Boyd at the slot and guys are just going to be static? So it's going to be interesting to see.
I think
it's
Tyler
interesting,
Boyd,
right? Because Jamar Chase still moved around. T. Higgins still moved around, even with Tyler Boyd on the team. So I guess that's where you have Treylon Burks or NWI come in, because maybe Tyler Boyd is a little bit older, so he's probably going to be on a more limited snap count anyway. Right. But it was interesting that I saw Ramon Foster talk about it from the Steelers' point of view, is that when Tyler Boyd got into the league and he was still playing, it kind of like nickelback got a little bit more emphasis from the defenses when Tyler Boyd was out there. So the quality of your nickelback mattered. So we'll see if that kind of importance still matters. But I will say this about Treylon Burks and his situation. I think he came into a situation with a coaching staff that I don't think wanted him. From what I've heard, I don't think they wanted him. I think that he got the brunt of the John Robinson, A.J. Brown stench on him, and this staff didn't want him, didn't want to coach him. And this staff is very that staff is very notorious for we're throwing you in the deep end. You have to do everything yourself. You have to learn how to be a pro. You have to learn how to train and all this stuff. And a lot of these kids, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a good example, because I think that's what more wide receivers should be doing, because you're training for football, which is entirely different than training for pro days and combines. And in a perfect world, if you're a first-round wide receiver prospect, you need to be training to play football, because that's where your hamstring injuries pop up. That's where you're out of shape for football shape. And I think that it was a good sign to hear, and I can't remember if it was DeAndre Hopkins or maybe Rand Carthon. I don't know who said it, but they said that Treylon Burks was already training with DeAndre Hopkins. So I do think that I think that while a lot of stuff is on Treylon Burks, and I agree, I think a lot of it is also still on this coaching staff, just not the previous coaching staff, just not really liking him. And we've seen that if that coaching staff's out on you, they're going to leave you behind, for better or for worse.
The sad thing about all this is that if you look at Treylon Burks, I mean, he's still, and it's the same thing with Devontae Sweat. These guys are still kids, man. I mean, they're 23, 24 years old. They don't necessarily. It's his first time being a pro. He doesn't necessarily know, what is expected of a pro. And he went to Arkansas. It's not like he went to Alabama where he's got a Calvin Ridley, just mentors and receivers that he can lean on. He's got to learn as he grows, and he's got to learn from the guys that are in the building. And as we know, we ain't had shit in the building until DeAndre Hopkins came. So, I mean, there's a little bit of sympathy there, but, I just want to see what he does going forward now. He's done well this offseason. We'll see how he does.
Yeah, it's all on him at this point. I mean, he's paired with the right coaching staff. So in my opinion, it's all on Treylon Burks, and that's how it was. I don't necessarily agree with their strategy of including him in the plans, which is kind of how the offseason has kind of gone. They are including him to be a big part of the plans. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I do understand it.
I don't think he fits that power slot that everybody's saying either. His body type is not fitting of it. It's not. And I'm not.
I think he's your Calvin Ridley. Like when Calvin Ridley comes off the field, Treylon Burks goes out there. When DeAndre Hopkins comes off the field, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine comes out there. Maybe that's a too linear way to look at it, but that sure seems how they're approaching this offseason.
We'll probably see like a third of the snaps, give or take.
Yeah. And then I guess we're already talking about the wide receivers, but obviously the Titans, they drafted one in the 6th round, Jaquan Jackson out of Tulane, Tajay Spears, running mate, his roommate in college. So I see Jaquan Jackson as just a special teams ace. He's coming in as a returner. And if they sign Tyler Boyd, obviously the slot snaps are not going to be there. He can be that replacement there, I guess. But I made these over-unders yesterday before the Boyd rumor mill started going out there. And I was just looking, I was like, what do we think he could do as a returner, as a receiver? So as a receiver, I set the line for him at 222 yards receiving. So I think is pretty low.
For Jaquan?
For Jaquan, do we think he's going to go over or under in that? And I'll have my explanation for setting that line afterwards. Let's go ahead and start with you, Jonathan.
I was going to say, I think he's got to make the team first. I'm not 100% sold that he will. I think that it was a good pick at that value for a few reasons. Obviously, the kick return game situation, you need more than one returner. The Titans have kind of struggled to have that person to begin with. I mean, Mason Kinsey has made a career out of sticking around because of his value in the return game. So I think the return game problem has, Brian Callahan inherited that. So I think the pick makes a ton of sense in that way, but I don't necessarily think that he's a better option than Kyle Phillips to me. Again, I'm kind of arguing for the same defense of a player who has not been healthy enough to stay on the field and the production hasn't been there. But I think he's talented, and I think he could be a primary returner. So I don't know. I think there's a good chance that the Titans keep 7 receivers. I just kind of have that gut feeling. I know that's a lot, but they have quite a bit of talent there, and it'll be a tough decision regardless of if they do decide to cut and go to 6. But I like Jaquan Jackson. He kind of has like the Malik Washington stench. Like I think we're all kind of like defensive about the Amon-Ra St. Brown thing, where you trade up and take Des Fitzpatrick over him. To me, on draft day, I'm sitting there. It's funny, like I'm a big Magic the Gathering player, and I have a group of guys that I play with like once a month. And me and my buddies are sitting there, and we're playing. And I literally have my phone and the NFL app, and I'm just tracking the picks. And I'm like, Malik Washington, we're at 4. Cedric Gray, okay, that makes sense. Love Cedric Gray, cool. I'm fine with that.
You're just eyeing him.
And then he falls again, and I'm like, oh, okay, all right, that's fine. He's still there. That's crazy. All right, I'm looking at it. 182. Okay, all right, Rand. Malik Washington, he's right there. And then it's like Jaquan Jackson. So I don't know a tremendous about him enough. Like, I didn't watch his game, but I do know from a production standpoint, pretty average, right? Like, when he has the ball in his hands, he's super athletic, makes guys miss. Awesome. We love that. We love playmakers. But he just didn't wow me, and I don't know if he's for sure going to make the team in that way. The good news is we're going to have some competition at training camp, which is good, but maybe Zach can kind of educate us a little further on Jaquan in terms of what we think he is as a player. But yeah, I'm just not super high on him.
I'm not super high on him either. It took the wind out of the sails of the 7-hour episode when Jaquan Jackson was drafted. I haven't liked Jaquan Jackson since the Senior Bowl. I understand that there is it's kind of like maybe the Senior Bowl's his ACT is like he doesn't do well at standardized tests, but he has a 4.0 GPA at Tulane. There's a lot to like on this film, but I think that I am with you. This idea that just because he was drafted in the 6th round, meaning that he's going to make the team, that is not the case in the NFL. The NFL league-wide, 6th and 7th round rookies that just got drafted get cut and put on practice squads, or they get picked up by other teams. You have no loyalty. The player themselves has to stand out and has to find a spot on this roster. And I did. John's right. I tried to look at everything. I went to all kinds of sites, our evaluations, other people's evaluations, my notes. I went to stats, and this pick is a Tyke Tolbert driven pick, because Tyke Tolbert was at the pro day. He spent a lot of time with Jaquan Jackson, and so this is where you kind of just like, they saw something, and I think it has more to do with the personality, with the drive, the dedication, than it does with the skill set and the player and the production. Because I mean, we're talking about a guy that his entire career is 1,500 something yards, but he has like 17 touchdowns, and he has one kickoff return for a touchdown. So I mean, he's not an explosive player, but I think he does play faster during the game than what it shows. But it's also against, the Tulane, their conference is not that great. So sometimes, it's just a competition thing, and maybe he just looks faster than just really slow people. But I will say this. You look back, you bring up Des Fitzpatrick and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I get it. It's a 6th round pick. It's a 7th round pick. And I meant to bring up the stats of players that have played 800 snaps that were drafted in the 6th round. It's like 19, I think. So 19 players that were drafted in the 6th round in 2023, they went on to play 800 plus snaps. So that's a really high threshold, by the way. 800 snaps is like 80% or 85% of the snaps. I'm sure if you went to 50%, I'm sure that number just explodes. But we saw on this team, Des Fitzpatrick was drafted in the 4th round, didn't make the team. Racey McMath, who was also a wide receiver, drafted in that same draft class, didn't make the team that year in the initial 53-man roster cuts. So there's a good chance that Jaquan Jackson doesn't. But it's kind of like Will Levis, right? Will Levis, his stats aren't that great. But if anybody is going to prove doubters wrong, it's a guy that is driven to be the best. And I do think that Jaquan Jackson, paired with his roommate, who may be living with him at this moment right now, I think that those guys are going to hold each other accountable. But I don't expect much. What was the over-under total? Because I just talked a lot.
222.
Yeah, I'll go take the under on receiving yards on that.
So,
but I mean, his value is the return game, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, which I don't think he's amazing at any ways.
Right.
I mean,
I agree.
He muffed a punt on about 5% of all returns, including fair catches in college. But I didn't see the explosion there either. So ultimately, I think he's probably safer than Kyle Phillips at that position. But that's his key to make this roster, is to be a good return specialist.
Jaquan Jackson being explosive at Tulane is kind of like me being explosive at the YMCA against other random dudes. Like, we make jokes about
Tajay Spears was explosive, right? Like, that though was like legit explosiveness that you could see. It's tangible. We all saw it constantly, even at the Senior Bowl. The difference is that you did not see that at a consistent. It's just a different way of viewing explosiveness, and I think that you could clearly see Tajay Spears was more explosive than even at USC when he played in that bowl game than anybody else on that team.
That's one way you can look at it, is when those guys that are at those smaller schools, their play speed in their conference is one thing, how fast they move on tape in relation to the other players. But when they play some big dogs and they're still moving in that same relation, look at Malachi Corley, how he performed against Ohio State. That's when you can sort of cascade that to a greater, talent pool and really understand how great they are. This pick, man, and it's gonna sound bad because he could very well turn out to be good and very productive for us, and I'll look like an idiot. But I hope that happens. But this pick makes me sick. It really does, like sick to my stomach of what we could have had in Malik Washington in the slot. We wouldn't have been talking about a 200 over under for him. We would have been talking about 500 over under. That solves the slot for us. And they have that's a couple, that and the T'Vondre Sweat pick, and we'll get into that later. I didn't agree with our board this year with their order of who they're picking and where they picked them. I like the players we have. I just don't like when we took them. Jaquan, I don't like Jaquan as a player for us. I'd rather have Malik Washington, but obviously the board told them different. So, they got to trust the board. What I can say after I say I don't trust or I don't like their board is that I see there's a process in place and I trust the process. So, I can live with that, but we've got to see the fruit of that process at this point. We've got a year and a half of it.
They told us what the strategy was with the draft, right? Like when you see, because we all did a bunch of mock drafts, but when you did mock drafts and looked at the strategy, if you end up taking a receiver at 7, it really messed everything up because it's like, okay, now I have to go tackle at 38. And do you even get a good tackle at 38? Who falls? It just messes everything up. When you you get your tackle at 7, then it allows you to take best player at other positions of need. They go defensive interior at 38, which we thought made sense. Like you go edge or interior. And so they fill those two big needs. It makes sense. Like they clearly see value in Kyle Phillips and Traylon Burks and in Nick Westbrook-Akine, some of these guys who, could see better production in a higher pass volume offense. And then they clearly have some, thoughts on what they're doing in terms of adding more talent. Like I think Tyler Boyd probably makes a ton of sense for Tennessee, right? So it makes sense that they didn't take a receiver until later in the draft. I just question which one they took. And the fact that you had, and by the way, it wasn't just Malik Washington. Like Cornelius Johnson was a 7th round pick. Rice, a 7th round pick. The Chargers were just like, yum, 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 yum. Gimme. So it was just like, there's good talent there. I just kind of question who they picked and less about the strategy. I thought their strategy of what positional selections made sense. But, like you said, we'll trust the process. And this is BC's first year, new offense, first year, I'm fine with it.
The pick reminds me of the MLB drafts when they have those coaches and, you got the AAA hitting coach and his nephew is a good player out in freaking Wyoming and they draft him. That's what this pick reminds me of. And
Tajay got his homie a job, bro. That's hilarious.
I respect it, but God, dog, we could have Malik Washington. A guy explosive.
I agree. I mean, even Malik Washington, he returned 13 kicks last year on the kickoffs for Virginia. So it's not like he can't learn how to do a punt. I mean, that's where your special teams coach comes in. Like special teams coach has to teach something, right? They have to coach something, and it might as well be how to catch a punt or get the most. This just feels like to me. I don't think it'll be as drastic a difference between Des Fitzpatrick and Amon-Ra St. Brown, but this is just one of those picks where you're like, if he does not make the team in this instance, and you see Malik Washington make the team, and I forgot who he's drafted by,
Miami,
off the top of my head.
He's gonna go crazy there.
Oh God, why did I forget that?
Seared into my brain.
Yeah,
and so McDaniel's fist pumping and shit when he picks him. I mean, I'm just sick.
It is interesting because of the contrast between the 4th round picks versus 6th round picks. I mean, because multiple teams kept passing on Malik Washington. Is it just the size? And if that's the case, I think people are really overvaluing size, especially with Malik Washington, especially after a draft where everybody just kind of threw it away, maybe because their hands were forced. But Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, Josh Downs all went way higher than Malik Washington. I think Malik Washington has just as good a tape as some of those guys. And some of the advanced metrics back that up. So in my mind, I'm thinking, Malik Washington's going to make the Dolphins. We're going to see Malik Washington put up some stats while Jaquan Jackson is just relegated to special teams duty at best. And it's going to be a big question about the evaluation process of the wide receiver position as a whole when it comes to these rookies, because it's just the same old, right? Is there something that happens when people come into St. Thomas Sports Park where they just don't know how to draft wide receivers? Like, what is going on at St. Thomas Sports Park?
I'm going to tell you, man, I am going to blow a gasket in October or November when I see Malik Washington running down the damn sideline in Miami with a peace sign up. I'm going to be pissed.
Yep.
Doesn't fit Ryan's MO. Doesn't start with a J. Didn't go to the Senior Bowl. Malik didn't do either of them. But
I'm gonna check Malik Washington's full name out here to see, make sure he doesn't have a J for a middle name.
He must be a psychopath. The evaluators must know something that we don't, because him falling to 184 first off makes no sense. So it's not that the Titans just misevaluated him in terms of like, oh, this guy sucks or whatever. But yeah, this one's gonna sting. It feels like it. I pray that Malik Washington has just a absolute average career, and he just sucks, because if he is any good, this one's gonna hurt again. And it feels like we get at least one of these a year where it's like, could have had that guy.
And I don't want to hear that every team passed on him. Like, I hate that. Really, if he's good, well, every team missed out on him. Now the Tennessee Titans have done it twice. And in rounds where they draft a wide receiver, that's the thing, is that they obviously had wide receiver in 6th round earmarked, and that they were going to take more than likely that was like the best player available, and they just whiffed. I mean, John Robinson traded up for Dez Fitzpatrick. At least they didn't do that in this situation.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we do another 30 minutes on Jaquan Jackson and Malik Washington, let's go and move on to the.
That was your fault. You
Let's just talk about the 6th round pick.
You didn't know that we had that many thoughts on Jaquan Jackson.
I did not. I did not think the 6th round draft.
Right, thanks for tuning in this morning, everybody. Thank you for coming.
I do want to say, I'm with B. Will. When I talk bad about a prospect or a player, I hope I'm proven wrong, by the way.
Exactly.
I don't want people to think I'm rooting against anybody. Any of your listeners, and I think that, like, a lot of people think I hate Jaquan Jackson, and I will always hate Jaquan Jackson. That was true with Dez Fitzpatrick. I at least think that Jaquan Jackson, even in the 6th round, is better than Dez Fitzpatrick, who should have been an undrafted free agent. And I said 100%. That at the time.
Yes.
Well, let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes here. Let's talk some T'Vondre Sweat, because Zach put out an amazing article earlier this week, and I got to read that yesterday. But before we hop into that, do us a couple favors. If you're over there on Facebook, Twitter, like, retweet, do all those social shits. But let's head over to YouTube. Type in that search bar. Go to Broadway Sports Media. Go subscribe over there. Then you're going to type in 440 Sports. You're going to go over there. You're going to hit subscribe again. Then you're going to type in Stack the Inbox. You're going to go subscribe, pay $5 a month, if I remember correctly. And then you're going to come back to YouTube and type in Glory Day Sports, hop in the live chat, and join the conversation like John Gall in the comments. But T'Vondre Sweat, pick 38 on the for the Titans, interior defensive lineman, mammoth of a man. Zach, what are just your overall thoughts on Sweat? We'll start there.
I love the pick, and I have been talking about Sweat since the Senior Bowl, and maybe a little bit before that. But I guess on record, I've said that pairing Sweat with Jeffrey Simmons is such a good idea to begin with, in a vacuum, in the fact that I always look at those Jarrell Casey years, and it wasn't up until his very last season with the Tennessee Titans that Jarrell Casey finally got real pass rushing help when Jeffrey Simmons, and he only got to play like 8 or 9 games with him, and then it was over, and Jarrell Casey's off the team. And that was a waste of Jarrell Casey. And I always fear that the Tennessee Titans would keep doing that. And I get it. Danico Autry is just probably as good an impact player to pair with Jeffrey Simmons. But there's someone that he's got to grow with, right? You can't rely that a player is going to push back on Father Time every year. And I loved the Sweat since then. I said it would get my pants totally soaking wet. And then as I was writing, I was up at a bar up here in Hendersonville, and I was writing my first T'Vondre Sweat article that was coming out Monday, April 9th or 8th, whatever that day is. And that's when the news broke about T'Vondre Sweat's DWI. And I was like, crap. I mean, like I'm like 3,000 words deep on this article, and I'm like, I cannot believe that he did this to me. But it didn't really change anything because, you know, I had personal stuff like that has happened like that growing up. Not to say that it's, you know, oh, just throw it under the rug. Do not drink and drive. I totally regret decisions to do that. I've learned from my mistakes, but I also say that you're not defined by your worst mistake. And I think that was his worst mistake. And let me say this, I didn't know this at the time, but it was brought up to me yesterday. His car rolled over multiple times after being hit from behind by another car. That's a life-changing experience for those that have never been in a rollover car crash that rolls over multiple times. That's a life-changing experience, and I can attest to that. So I hope that he has learned from that. I will say that he looks very skinny. That's not really tied to anything, but I will say I knew that when he did not measure at the Senior Bowl. I was like, okay, he played a lot heavier, and I think the weight issues are real. And then we hear that he played at 380. Then we hear that we see he's measured and all that kind of stuff at the combine, and he's 366. Okay, he's lost 20 pounds. There is some form of dedication. I don't care who you are. There is some form of dedication to the game or knowing what you need to do to lose that amount of weight. Now it's about keeping it off and maybe losing a little bit more depending on where they're at in their threshold. He mentions 350 to 355. They didn't mention a weight. So they kind of said they didn't settle on one yet. They're going to wait till he meets with Zach Woodfin. But to me, this made sense. And anybody could point at the boards and say, well, Dane Brugler had him at 93 or 129 or wherever he's at. Matt Miller moved him down and all that. At the end of the day, that all was because of the DWI. Nothing else. Because in Dane Brugler's The Beast, in his own words, says he has improved conditioning. He has alleviated concerns. But listen, scouts are always going to have concerns, and that's fine, and all that and stuff. And listen, the DWI does not help anything. But I will say that he says in his stuff and stuff written about him that he has improved as a leader. He had improved conditioning in the Texas games. And I just don't I get the hate because I think everybody's got panda traumatic syndrome, PTSD. I stole that from Bonafide Bro on Twitter. But to me, it's like I've been on it this whole year. I've really liked it. They've done the due diligence, and there is a top 40 player in T'Vondre Sweat, and a lot of this will fall onto him and the coaching staff holding each other accountable. But mainly, he has to be self-accountable. And the day after he's drafted, he's already put in work. And you could say, well, every player's going to put up work on the next day after he's drafted or whatever. Isaiah Wilson didn't. So, I mean, like, there you go. The tape is the tape. I agree with Stoney. The tape is the tape, and it's exceptional tape. He won the Outland Trophy. He's one of like 6 or 7 defensive players in the last 15 years to win it, and that is a huge deal because they've all gone on to be really good. Ed Oliver, Quinnen Williamson, Ndamukong Suh, Jordan Davis, Aaron Donald. I mean, guys that are really good, and he's just another one. And the tape is the tape. Even if he was bad, or even if he was that good and he was overweight, right? They still chose to play him more, right? They still, an overweight and unconditioned player, in quotation marks, they still chose to play him more. He still won the trophy. He was still that good. And I agree with him. If you get me down to a certain weight range, it is game over for the rest of the NFL. I am a Hall of Famer, and I think that tells you everything you need to know about his mentality going into this. He knows the expectations that are on him, and he knows what the haters are saying, and he's going to turn that into fuel. And I think he's going to be really good. I love the pick. It's a good pick. You look at how, and I know, I'm sorry, I'm going on and on and on. Like this is my fucking show or something. But if you look at all the top 20 highest paid defensive linemen, they were all drafted in the first or second round. Kristen Barmore, drafted at 38th overall, right? Just got that huge thing. That is how you maximize roster construction. This is a good way to maximize roster construction because you're gaining so much value by having T'Vondre Sweat on this team in terms of salary. He has to perform, right? But every rookie has that caveat, right? every rookie can be a bust. There's very, very few non-bustable prospects. I mean, look at how many years we've covered this and talked about that. And I think that when you look at what the rookies did coming in, all these 20 highest paid players, right? When they were rookies, 36.6 snaps averaged their rookie year. That's not a big threshold for him to have to meet, right? Like per game, 36.6 snaps. That's not some big threshold. So, yeah, we'll be talking about T'Vondre Sweat all morning because Chris Sanders is kind of with me. You can hear Chris Sanders, the excitement in his voice when he was on 102.5 yesterday talking about it. Yep. Like, if you need Titans, if you need someone to be a body man or whatever for T'Vondre Sweat to keep him in line, hire me. I'll do it for really cheap, and I will keep T'Vondre Sweat honest. I'll drive him everywhere he needs to go, and it won't be to bars. We will eat. You know what? I'll be sober Zach. Bros with T'Vondre Sweat. Hire me. I'll be a sober bro.
Zach, you know the best part? The best part is you don't have to do that because there's a massive mammoth of a man who's the biggest leader in the Titans locker room playing right next to him in Jeffrey Simmons. That's why this pick is so good. Like the things that we don't talk about, the things you don't see on the stat sheet, the things that you don't see in prospect evaluation is that the value in the draft changes whenever you draft a certain player into a certain situation, meaning that a player could have a 90 prospect grade, but if they're drafted at 60 to a team that is just a really good fit for them, like Justin Matabuke with the Ravens is a really good example of this. He was a dog for them. And there's a lot of value on that defensive line where they helped each other really well. Jadeveon Clowney was a beneficiary of this. So my big thing with T'Vondre Sweat is that you get an upgraded version of what Teair Tart never was. But even Teair Tart in the way he was and the player he was, the difference between the run defense when he was there and when he was not there was significant. Jeffrey Simmons double teams significantly more. So my thing is that not only did you draft a player that's a great player at that position, regardless of what letter or grade where you have him, regardless of where that is, he makes your star player on the defensive line better and vice versa. This is different. This is the situation like what Jarrell Casey should have had with Jeffrey Simmons, where this young player gets to come in and he gets to mentor him. Jeff is loud. He's very, very vocal in saying like, look, if you're on this team, you're going to want to be here and you're going to put in the work. Like, we're not doing this whole like drag ass stuff. Like you're going to put in the work. So I don't think that T'Vondre is going to have an opportunity to fall off the wagon or to like not care, because he has what I think is a future Hall of Famer right next to him, and he makes that player better and vice versa. So I think that, you talk about the 2-down stuff and like be well, Jake, I'll let you guys kind of chime in because I know you guys kind of have like opposing opinions a little bit on it. And I do kind of want to hear Zach. Zach has a good opinion on like the whole 2-down thing. So I'll let you guys go. But yeah, I think there are some factors to this pick that make it good outside of just player stats. Because I heard somebody say, well, he's only had 5 sacks in 5 years. Dude, the player that he's a support player. Like he makes the players around him better. That's why he was out there as much as he was. And all of his teammates on the defense attest to that. They talk about it all the time, all through the season. So I'm really high on it. But yeah, I'll let you guys kind of.
So I'll preface all this with saying I don't hate the pick. I don't really even dislike the pick. I'm just not ecstatic about it. I mean, I think we could have had, depending on what he is, and if he doesn't do more in the pass game, we could have got this value later in the draft, a run stuffing, one tech, if that's what it is, and that's what his floor is. Who knows if he reaches his ceiling or what he could be? Who knows if he gets off his floor? I didn't like the amount of risk at 38 with what we had on board. I mean, we could have took Adonai Mitchell. I know he's got risk with diabetes, but so allegedly, obviously, but
all diabetes Mitchell. That's what the AD stands for. All diabetes.
See, but I would have liked that. But in that same token, if we're not going to take him, you still take a guy at a premium position like T'Vondre Sweat. You don't go and take a linebacker. You know what I mean? Because you steal some cap. You steal some years in cap, and you can really build around the team if you've got guys in premium positions on rookie deals like we will have in T'Vondre Sweat if he turns out to be who he is. Another person, and this guy is just as important and with the ramifications on this pick is Jeffrey Simmons, and really makes it to where I'm at ease with it a little bit, is L'Jarius Sneed. You know, if we don't have a guy like L'Jarius Sneed that'll give that defensive line a little bit more time, that T'Vondre Sweat pick has me rolling my eyes. But also with L'Jarius Sneed, I'm looking at how our teams and offensive coordinators going to attack our defense. So first off, when they go in on Monday morning install, they're probably circling Amani Hooker. That's one. But but the run game is something that this roster and this defense was attackable with the additions of L'Jarius Sneed and Awuzie. That has been solved with T'Vondre Sweat. And, you know, I hate to say it as a rookie that it's solved, but that's 360 pounds of beef in there that you got to account for. And then you got to account for L'Jarius Sneed on the backside. So that's what makes me, you know, like the pick a little more. I'm not going to say I'm excited about it, but it puts me at ease when we have a guy like L'Jarius Sneed on the backside and then a guy like Jeffrey Simmons that's going to play off of Sweat. I just want to see what Sweat can do on third down and pass rushing downs. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, I kind of mimic that. I don't hate the pick. I just thought there may have been better players on the board at that point in time. But when we're talking processes, what were the two biggest needs of this team going into the draft? Left tackle, and what was this run defense going to look like? Both have been addressed, and you may have plugged the middle with the biggest man in the entire draft. And he has the technique to mimic that. He's really, man, he's like gas station chicken fingers to me. He could be great, he could be terrible, and has a lot of range of motion in there. But we're talking just pure snap counts. I think he can play on third down. He played more than Byron Murphy there at Texas in that rotation that they had going on there. And he was really the 3 tech there and not the 1 tech. They did rotate those.
Back and forth.
They moved back and forth, but I think he only played like 50 snaps at nose tackle. And
it was a lot less than what I initially had envisioned when I saw the numbers.
I just say 1 tech because I don't see us moving around that much. Like, I'll see Jeff as being the 3 and him moving to the strong side more so than T'Vondre Sweat. That's what I see, you know.
Yeah. I think you'd be surprised. This Denard Wilson defense should be pretty exotic. I would expect him to kind of move around, and he has that versatility, which makes it even better to me. But
in base, like on third down, all's out the window. They're going to have a lot of sim pressure looks. But in base, I just see T'Vondre Sweat as the 1 tech. But that's also just what I see. I don't know. We haven't seen a Denard Wilson called game yet. So
yeah,
no.
This should be.
But and when I say T'Vondre Sweat on third down, I'm not talking about conditioning. I'm not worried about his conditioning. He's a professional football player. I expect conditioning. You know, I'm talking about pass rushing ability to really be a dog on third down, and we don't have to substitute a guy in to come down because he's not as efficient as we thought.
I think that's where he's probably most overlooked.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think there was this preconceived notion that he's a fat guy that is just a run stopper. And this is not just for B-Will. I think that is what the messaging coming out of a lot of people that cover the Tennessee Titans is that he's a run stuffer and all this stuff. But he's a pass rusher. Like that, I think he's really good at stopping the run. Don't get me wrong. He's one of the best run stoppers in this league. But there's a reason why he was in on like 395 pass rushing snaps for Texas. Led the team in pass rushing snaps for the defensive line, and especially and led the team on third downs as well. The reason being is because he has the hands, the power, and the nimble feet that all work in concert with each other. Sure, it's not consistent and doesn't lead to sacks and all this kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is that guy got double teamed. And that's the big thing. And I agree with you, B. Will, in the fact that like what he does for L'Jarius Sneed and what he does for the rest of these guys, not only on just run downs, but on pass rushing downs. Because you got to remember, second down are like 59% of second down plays or passes. So I mean, like for me, I have a more of a bigger issue with like calling him a 2-down run stuffer than I do have calling him just a 2-down player, unless you're using that to say that he's a run stuffer. Because in my mind, I'm like, even if he plays 2 downs, he's going to be able to affect the pass. And yes, maybe when they go 4 corners wide and then they only have Jeffrey Simmons on the line with Arden Key and Harold Landry, you won't see him on third down. That does not mean he isn't an impact player in that game on first and second down. So for me, it's like he helps everybody, including Jeffrey Simmons, because if you don't double team T'Vondre Sweat and you double team, you're making a Sophie's choice. when you're on that offensive line and you're game planning? How are we going to attack and double team Jeffrey Simmons if we can't double team Tavondre Sweat? And Tavondre Sweat in pass plays and run plays will make you regret not double teaming him. And so for me, it's like his rare blend of power, speed, and agility at his size it's just too good to pass up. He was number 30 on my big board. When I create a big board, I do horizontal and vertical, right? I do it just like the teams do. And at the time, he was the best player available. And at the time, I had him a best player available, and he was number 30. And so I thought that he was that high on their board. And there were other teams you may have been able to get him at 45 if you could have finagled to trade back into that range. But if you went back into the 50s, you're not getting them, because I think other teams would have gotten them. Even teams that maybe took corners could have had Tavondre Sweat ranked higher than those corners. It's just that they didn't have Sweat there. I think he would have been gone in the second round. I think the people that dropped him way too far off their big boards, they got really ridiculous. I try to warn everybody, is like, as bad as it sounds, the NFL does not care about DWIs unless there is major injury or anything involved. They do not care. And so
they don't give a shit.
They were not going to drop Tavondre Sweat that far. And the people that do, the teams that do, don't have a need at defensive tackle, right? They don't have that need. So they can have that flexibility. Say like, oh, well, we're dropping him to day 3, right? The teams that you hear like, oh, this team has dropped him day 3. Well, we didn't really need a defensive tackle, but if he's there in day 3, that's too good of a value to pass up. Like, right? I mean, that's kind of how NFL teams build their boards. So to me, I love the pick, and I hope that everybody is at least maybe a little bit more excited, a little bit more horny after hearing all this stuff this morning.
And that's one thing too, is Brian Callahan told us in the press conference after they drafted him exactly. I mean, he said it without saying it. They got trade offers, but the offers were probably into the late 50s, maybe with the Eagles at like 53 or something, or closer to 60. And when you trade back to that, the Titans are missing out on probably a handful of the guys that they had valued there. So then you take that trade, maybe you acquire a 3rd round pick next year, or maybe a 4th this year or whatever. But then you miss out on probably the top 3 or 4 guys that they had in that range. So they looked at that, they got trade offers, and the offers were not very good. So they're like, look, we're going to stick and take our guy. That happened at 7 as well. They told us they had several offers. Teams called, but the offers weren't good enough to move off of the talent, which is what I was saying going into the draft. I think I said it on this show a couple weeks ago, was that I think that you're not going to see as many trades because the trade offers are not going to match the value of the talent that a team would be losing if they move down. And that's exactly what they said at 38, essentially. So that's another reason why I love that pick too, is because what do you trade down to 53? And then you go, okay, like at that point, you know, the Eagles made a trade with the Colts and then AD was taken at 52, but a handful of guys are gone. And then you don't just take a guy at a position that you've already had slotted. Like, for example, like the receiver situation. I would have loved AD at 38. I was pounding the table. You guys saw it. Like, I know Jake saw it on Twitter. Like, I had a prayer circle tweet that went viral. Like, we were doing well. Like,
on your birthday, nonetheless.
On my birthday, I was like, come on, please. I need this for my birthday. But it made sense. Like, they went into this draft saying, okay, look, we're going to find a late round talent to add some depth to the receiver position. We're going to call Tyler Boyd and bring him in probably. So we don't necessarily have to spend a top 100 pick on a guy there. So I get it. It makes sense in my book. I am so excited for this pick. They went to filled the trenches on both sides of the ball in top 100, and then just stuck and took their guys. Got Cedric Gray for great value at 106, in my opinion. Happy with the draft.
I'm telling you, I cannot wait until next year to watch all 22 footage of our offensive line and defensive line. To watch Latham.
Yeah, it won't be a pain.
Exciting stuff. It was bad before.
I do have one thing about Tavondre Sweat real quick. If you notice in the press conference, nobody asked if he was a 2-down player before they said that he was a 3-down player. And I think that tells you what the Tennessee Titans think. You know, Jalen Harrell, they were asked that. But in the Tavondre Sweat thing, that's like one of the first things they said, is that he's a 3-down we got our 3-down player.
Yep.
Yeah. I think my initial reaction when I first I saw of him was at the Senior Bowl, when from what we were shown, you guys were there in person. Obviously, we just had to watch the tape, but you see that clip of him just bending back Bo Limmer like a Murphy bed, and he just played with power the entire weekend. But then you go back and watch the tape. This dude has amazing hands. Amazing hands. That club to swim move, he can hit it on unquestioned. But when I'm looking back at like some of these other draft grades out there in the media, like the PFF boys and all those, they just pretty much said, well, teams are just going to run outside zone against them. That's just what they're going to do. They're just going to run away from them. And with that, you're running into Simmons if you do that. But I went back and looked at the AFC South just in general. It's like, how many times are they calling outside zone out there? And really, I mean, Colts, Texans, they're pretty similar. They're calling about 60%. Texans run about 60%, but 56% of those runs are inside the tackle box. So they're either changing their game plan to attack the Titans differently, and then that's where you bring in guys like Kenneth Murray and Cedric Gray that have that speed to make those tackles on the outside on the perimeter. So I think
that's a good point, Jake, because, and I'll let you get to, but that
Zach
running
Moss beat him
outside
up
zone.
front.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
But the outside zone, that's another reason why I wanted to. If we weren't going to take Malik Washington, we could have got a big run stuffing edge like Mo Kamara. That's another guy I wanted. But I cannot see Rashad Weaver trying to set another edge for this ball club, because that's who they'll run at too if he's in on second down. They'll run at him, whatever side he's on. I can count on one hand how many times he set the
table
edge.
For some Gabriel Murphy throughout all that too. We couldn't believe that Gabriel Murphy went undrafted. Like, I feel like but that's also kind of goes into, like, I was looking at the Colts draft because I was putting that up this morning. It's like they drafted Micah Abraham and Jonah Lalu. Why wouldn't you draft Gabriel Murphy over those two guys? You know,
I'm an Oklahoma fan. I don't know who Lalu is.
Yeah, I feel like they kind of like the NFL didn't know what to do with itself in the 6th and 7th round this year. It just felt really weird. There were some names that I'd never even heard of getting drafted.
They blamed it on NIL.
Yeah,
that's what they blamed it on.
Then you let Gabriel Murphy fall to the cracks. Like, that's not how like I said, I thought the NIL thing was blown out of proportion, especially by Jim Nagy for whatever reason. But I think it was blown out of proportion.
I'm excited to see what this defensive line does. I mean, it's I can't say I'm excited for the pick in particular, but I'm excited to see what the unit as a whole does. I'm worried about outside zone, especially with Slowick and Houston. They've got a running back to be able to run this stuff now. So I just hope they don't run at Weaver. So, and Key's light too in the run game. So, I mean, we've got guys outside that are light. The only guy that can really stand up for himself in the run game on the edge at this moment is Landry. That's one side. They can just run away from him.
You do hope that Kenneth Murray can be see ball, get ball, and attack that edge over on the side opposite of Harold Landry. So I kind of think like you kind of give yourself two chances to miss a tackle. You know what I'm saying? Like Arden Key, Rashad Weaver, and then Kenneth Murray. You at least have two chances to make a tackle on that outside edge.
And I can see their logic in that because we've got two dogs in the center that'll sort of eat up the cutbacks. Yeah. So, you know, because when we over pursue like that and kind of compensate for not being able to set an edge, that just that's the bread and butter of a zone scheme, is to hit that cutback right up the seam. So Simmons,
we haven't even talked about Sebastian Joseph Day, right? That pushes
Sebastian
him down
Joseph Day as well.
Depth chart, and there you go. Less responsibility on him. Maybe that maximizes his talents as well.
Most definitely. That backside linebacker is going to have to fill. Simmons and Sweat are going to have to scrape. I mean, that's probably what I'll be saying all season: is scrape and fill.
Yeah. Well, I think we're an hour in. We've covered 2 draft prospects, but we still have a draft to do. So I think it's probably good to move on to that. So as you guys know, we end each show with a draft of whatever. Today, we're drafting buddy cops, and that is based on NFL head coaches. And I don't have the order in front of me, but I believe Zach has the 101. B. Will is going second. I think I am third, and Jonathan is on the turn. So you can go a bunch of different directions with this, I think. There's only 32 head coaches. So where are we going with the 101, Zach?
I'm going right off the top rope, right? Like, I think I'm going a little unconventional with my buddy cop movies that I'm using as a basis for these coach pairings. But Mike McDaniel and Dan Campbell, right off the top, I'm taking both of them at the same time. Jesus. This is like Deadpool and Cable, right? This is Deadpool and Cable from Deadpool 2. Dan Campbell's this gruff guy. You know, he kind of has seen some shit like Cable has from the future. He's talking about Biden kneecaps like people talk about the Vietnam War. And then you got Mike McDaniel, the guy that just could fire off a million different quips and everything. Mike McDaniel, Dan Campbell, best buddy cop pairing that you could pick out of the NFL.
Half of that reminds me a little bit of Pineapple Express. I mean, you got Mike McDaniel ripping vapes, ripping drags on the sideline in between calling plays.
All right, B. Will, you are up next.
So I think I'm gonna go a little contrasting styles here. We got a guy that's dealt with a lot of adversity and a lot of interesting characters throughout his career at this team. He knows how to talk people down, talk people off a ledge. I'm sure. He's really got away with words, and he can get people going in the right direction if you need him, and that's Mike Tomlin. I mean, this guy's dealt with so many different personalities up there, and he keeps them quiet too. So that's a cop you wouldn't have to worry about. And then you could pair him with a guy like Dayball. You add a little fire into that. Dayball will bring the fire, and he'll be able to take care of it. He's a big dude too, so he's got I ain't gonna say he's got the little man syndrome. He's not as tall, but he could get it done. So I'll pair them two.
That's kind of the direction I was going as well. I actually had it McDaniel and Dayball. So you guys mixed those two together for me. So this is my 101, I think. And this is Andy Reid and Nick Sirianni. You've got the guy. This is the other guy's movie to me. You got the guy that's eating the chicken fingers on the side. He's kind of coming. He's a successful guy, even though he's laid back. And you got Nick Sirianni dropping F-bombs. I mean, Andy Reid, Nick Sirianni, and
you might have that apprentice cop too. What's the security guy that they have on the side in Philadelphia that he basically coaches the team?
Jalen Hurts.
No, he coaches the team too. The big security guy they suspended. I forget his name.
Yeah.
Big Sam or something. He's got some mafioso name or something. I don't know what kind of organization they're doing up there in Philly, but
all right. So I'm really excited because I got a couple pairings that fell to me. Dan Campbell, I knew wasn't going to make it, but I had Dan Campbell and one of my other guys would have been a really fun pairing. But this one's going to be a real bad boys type of vibe. Really like this pairing. I'm going to go with D'Amico Ryans and Antonio Pierce.
Oh,
Two guys,
Damn.
big personalities, tough dudes. Just gives you that bad boys feel, I feel like. So D'Amico and AP will be my first pick. And then on the wraparound in the second round, I'm going to go with a pairing that just makes a ton of sense. These guys aren't big personalities. They're actually pretty quiet. Maybe this movie would be super boring, but I think the pairing makes sense. So I'm going to roll with Zach Taylor and Brian Callahan.
God damn you. That was my pick. To the T. I mean, they're buddies already. They're going spring breaking. I mean, it's just their real life, basically.
If there was a
let's
movie,
do past two
guys, let's be honest, it'd be super boring. These are
yeah.
Let's do formers too, so we don't run out. You don't want to do formers. You just want to do currents.
You can go formers. I don't care. Open it up to the
opens
world.
up a little bit.
Wait a second. I
don't have any of that on my board, but all right. So I guess I'm back up, and I'm going. I mean, these guys know each other pretty well. I don't know if they get along too much anymore, but that's Dan Quinn and Mike McCarthy. So getting that crew back together, I feel like if you guys watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine, this is Scully and Hitchcock. They're just, I mean, not much to say about them. But all right, B. Will, you are back up with your second pick.
I was gonna go former, but then I thought about it, and this is the logical solution right here, man. And it's a perfect buddy cop. They've got a lot of continuity. They've known each other for a very, very, very long time. They know everything about each other. I'm gonna go John and Jim Harbaugh here. I'll have the both of them.
Pick. Oh, it's a good one. Yeah, it's a good one that slid, huh?
So I got John and Jim Harbaugh. We'll see how that goes.
That one on the turn.
We'll see how that goes. We got both a little old school, but I can't even figure out which ones they are. Jim is the one that just came from Michigan, so he has a little experience with the younger guys. He can talk them off a ledge if they're there. And John, I think I said it right. And John he's just easygoing guy. So I think it's my pick.
All right. Okay. Here's where we're going. Okay. Whew, I got.
These are your last two.
It's getting tough.
I know. I think enough to make the turn when it comes back to me and end on it. So I'm picking two here. So I'm gonna go a little bit of like Pelican Brief, but with the other guy's spin on it. And I'm taking Sean McVay and Mike McDonald because they're like geniuses, but they're hilarious and they have big personalities. So I'm kind of going with like Sean McVay, Mike McDonald right there. And then I'm going out of the box with my next one. I'm going Enemy of the State with Gene Hackman, Will Smith. Gene Hackman is this insane conspiracy theorist and everything. Obviously, I'm talking about Sean McDermott and his 9/11 Al Qaeda conspiracies, and then Will Smith is kind of thrust into the situation that maybe he's kind of prepared for, but he's really not. And I'm going to go with Gerard Mayo because I feel like he's kind of got thrust into. He's kind of prepared for the New England thing, but the other people are pulling the strings behind Gerard Mayo, the Kraft family, kind of like in Enemy of the State. People are pulling the strings to guide Will Smith through, to try to, get their information and stuff. So Gerard Mayo and Sean McDermott, Enemy of the State style.
All right. B-Will, you are back up.
I want to go former, but that wouldn't be fair to everyone else because that would be too easy for me. But I'm going to go with Sean Payton and Robert Saleh at my pick. Just because Robert Saleh, that guy, I mean, he's all amped up, ready to go. I don't know if people watched the series they had. I forget the series name that they did with the Jets. It's right on the top of my head. He's a guy that's going to be really motivational, trying to get the guys going in the right direction. And Sean Payton is the type of guy that he might be a dirty cop with the bounty hunting thing that he had under his belt. So that could lead to something pretty funny in the movie. But that's who I got.
All right, Sean Payton, Robert Saleh. And then, Zach, you had McDermott. Who was your second one?
It was McDermott and Mayo. Gerard
Mayo. Okay. I just didn't want to overdraft him. All right. So I am going to the Shanahan tree, and we're going Shanahan. And then we'll also go with Matt LaFleur. Kind of got that father. I mean, this is protege. Yeah. Exactly.
They'll just let shit go by. They won't even say nothing. Both of them.
No, this is chips. So.
LaFleur let Jair Alexander go on the field and do the coin toss, and he only got suspended for a game, I think, or a quarter or something like that.
All right. Jonathan, you are back up.
Let's see. I got my final two picks here, I think, right?
Yep.
Okay, so for the first one, I'm going to roll with Jonathan Gannon and Nick Sirianni. This one would probably legitimately be two really fun personalities together. That would make a fun dynamic, and obviously there's the connection. That's Super Bowl connection there. And then for this last one, this is so tough because there's like very limited connections here left. Like I have like all my pairings, and they're all just like lines through a bunch of random players. Let's see. Let me roll with. I kind of want to roll with like some new age guys, and there's a guy on here that makes a ton of sense, but the pairing doesn't necessarily. There's no one that's like jumping off of the board here for me. So, let's do this one. We'll continue to branch off of that tree there, and I think I'm gonna roll with. Let's go with Kevin O'Connell, and actually, you know what? No. Let's go Todd Bowles and Dave Canales. We'll stay in the coaching tree family. Keep that continuity.
I hope Canales does well in Carolina too, by the way. I hope. We'll see.
I think he's got a great personality.
Yeah. He can call plays too.
The wells have runneth dry, boys.
Yes, they have.
I wish we could do former. I would have threw Parcells in there in a heartbeat.
Oh my God, yeah.
Parcells, Rex Ryan. I mean, you talk about just two donut-eating guys just going at it.
I guess I'm going Dennis Allen and Raheem Morris been taken. Going Dennis Allen and Raheem Morris.
Not bad.
Okay.
All right. B-Will, you got your last pick.
Who's left?
Yeah,
we got everybody.
I'm
going to go former. Oh, we got four more.
I think so.
We already took Gannon, Eberflus. So I got Eberflus, and we got Doug Peterson as well. So they got a connection. And do they have a connection in Philadelphia? Eberflus and and Peterson. Either way, Peterson will be able to steady the ship. He'll be able to let everybody know where they need to go. Eberflus will probably sit there.
Hold on. That connection does make sense. Peterson to Frank Reich to Eberflus.
There we go. I figured they were everybody's connected. Everybody's like cousins in the NFL. It's sort of weird.
Bunch of Nepo babies.
Yeah, but yeah, Eberflus. I've seen something in the pregame stretches. He's going around like singing the lyrics with the players and stuff. He's a pretty cool guy. And then Peterson is Peterson, man. He's got his work cut out for him in Jacksonville this year.
All right, Zach, wrapping it up. Last pick of the draft.
I got it. I'm going with training day, right? You got the grizzled vet, and everything, and then you have the kind of like the guy that comes in to infiltrate and figure things out. And I'm going with defensive duo here, Jonathan Gannon, who would be in the Ethan Hawke role, and then you got Dan Quinn, who will be in the Denzel Washington role. And I think that they would make a great buddy cop because obviously Jonathan Gannon is a freaking nerd and Dan Quinn is totally not. So it'd be nice to see like Jonathan Gannon try to go undercover as like a diehard, like, meathead football player to try to, infiltrate the Washington Commanders locker room and stuff.
I already picked Gannon.
Yeah,
I thought we ran out of guys.
I already picked Nick Sirianni too, but I'll let that one slide.
Yeah, you doubled down on Nick Sirianni, but I didn't know you picked it. We already did.
It's out of the wind now.
Yeah, I'm cool with it. So I'm not going to repeat all 32.
Or Dennis Allen got left out. I think he's the one that got left out.
Poor Dennis Allen.
No, I took him in the last round. I don't even know who was left out.
He was too busy. He was too busy doing the budget because they got their budgetary issues down there in New Orleans.
I was about to say who didn't we pick here? I'm looking through the list and
we got everybody.
There's a couple. No, Kevin Stefanski didn't get picked.
Yeah,
that's who it was.
Did O'Connell get picked? You brought him up, but you didn't draft him. That's
I don't think I picked him. Yeah, so
that's the other.
And
one.
Ironically, that pairing actually makes a ton of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, that wraps it up today. Thank you again, Zach, for joining us. I know it's early. Most of our guests come on and they're half asleep by the time they hop on and wake up about halfway through. I feel like you were firing on all cylinders from the get-go, and we appreciate that. But make sure you guys check us out every Thursday, 7 Central. We'll be here. We'll be putting out content. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Like I said, go over to Football Never the F Words and the whole 440 Broadway Sports Media crew. Make sure you go like, comment, and subscribe on all their content as well. And we will check you guys later. We appreciate y'all. Love you, mean it. Peace.